I have returned! I left off in the last video pretty abruptly, but here we are again. We're just gonna keep on going, pick up exactly where we left off, and by pick up I mean I don't think I even stopped. I just found an awkward place to break up the video so that y'all wouldn't have an hour-long video in your face. I've got the ferret reference photo up here. In case anybody doesn't remember, I based the dragon off of this ferret, so when looking at where his shadows are and where the light touches him, it's helpful to look back at this ferret photo. And of course, as I said in the last one, he's not going to look quite the same because we have light coming from all kinds of different directions, totally different lighting situation going on, but there are some things that remain universal, like the shadows under his arm, the shadow on his tail where he's sitting on it, those kinds of things. So it's still handy to have a reference photo there to see. Friendly reminder that the areas that I'm making darker, like the one that I'm working on right now, I'm just using more paint. And the areas that are lighter, I'm just using less paint, more water. I figure no matter what, his whole tail under here is probably going to be in some kind of shadow because it's up under his leg. This area under his elbow is going to be in shadow, so I'm adding more darkness there. That area under his back is going to be under shadow because of his wings, and of course his little bum is like underneath everything. And of course there will be some darkness under here under the book that he's holding because it's under something. So pretty much anything that's under something is going to have some darkness. Adding in the shadows really helps bring him back into kind of a more 3D shape and helps me be able to see him and see where he is. He's got some scales up here that kind of connect his head to his neck, so there's going to be some darkness there because there's an underneath. And this isn't necessarily so much underneath, but I imagine maybe there would be a little bit of some darkness coming from the book being in front of him, blocking out some of the light. And some darkness going under his wings because it's under the wings. And here you're going to see me start to build that darkness up more and more to make it more and more opaque in certain places. And as I do that, there will be some areas that I don't totally cover in darkness, so that's how you'll start to see it seem a little bit more like shading. I'm keeping his face more of the same kind of mid-tone situation, And way at the very end, I'll be adding light, which is my favorite part of the painting, but that's not like until the end. So don't fret if you see me painting dark where it seems obvious that light would be touching, because we'll get to it. Don't worry. I'm going to try to find where the darkness goes under his ears. And not just under his ears, but under the fold of his ear too. I don't have a reference photo of a rabbit for you, but if you happen to be doing long ears like I am, you might want to find a reference photo of a donkey or a rabbit. I've drawn so many rabbits in my life that I'm pretty okay at remembering what rabbit ears look like, so at least we have that. But that only comes from studying them and staring at them and trying over and over and over, so you might want that. I think a lot of my students didn't draw the long rabbit ears, rabbity kind of dragon ears. And that's totally awesome too. So if you have a different kind of ears that don't look like ferret ears, reference photo accordingly. Never forget this little ear back here behind the antlers. More water, more paint, testing it out on the palette again, per usual. And let me repeat here the thing I was saying before about using a smaller brush, but also if you can't use a smaller brush, and even if you are using a smaller brush, using a very, very light touch for these small areas and these more detailed spaces. Of course, for anyone who missed it, you're going to want to be using a round brush because they get really pointy at the end, which is what you want for detail work. And let me just encourage you again that if the details are so frustrating, it's okay. It just takes practice, and it's okay to be using a looser, more painterly style, because that's a cool thing in its own right also. I think at this point you might be starting to see how just using lighter and darker values will show us everything we need to know about where our dragon is. Oh, thank goodness I went straight for the palette knife this time for mixing paint. I think at this point I realized that I wanted the dragon to be a little more towards the red and a little less looking like Welch's grape juice or whatever over there. But it's not looking maroon yet. It's looking very blue. Definitely need more red. I think I was having a hard time remembering which red I used because I'm pulling from a red that's really pretty magenta. But I think that I needed a red that was more towards scarlet. FYI, he's still not maroon at all, but I guess I decided to just kind of go for it. just continuing to build up the paint and make it more opaque and add more pigment in all the places that I feel like it needs to go. And it's going to be a little thicker now. Like as I continue to work, the gouache is going to have to be thicker and thicker and thicker as it goes on, because if it's too diluted, then it's just going to reactivate all of the dried gouache in the layers underneath, and it's going to turn into a muddy puddle. But that doesn't mean that now we just go straight for straight up gouache. We're still adding some water to it. We're going to make it less and less diluted, a little bit at a time as the layers build up. Again, this is the kind of thing you'll get a feel for with practice. You'll know if you've got too much water if the paint underneath it starts moving and it starts mixing. You'll know that that's what's happening, and then you'll go, oh no, I need to add more paint. Forget about this little arm back here holding the book up. 100% forgot about that little arm back there. You can see how the dragon's starting to be a little less defined all over now that he's so dark everywhere. Gonna have to bring some lighter values back into this situation pretty soon. This is probably why you see me smudging around on him with a brush that has either just a little bit of water on it or that's almost totally dry. I'm trying to remove a little bit of pigment because it got to be a little bit too much. Also, it might be worth noting that the way that I use the brush is different if I'm trying to do a very fine line versus if I'm trying to smudge some extra pigment up off of the paper. It's a very light touch for a fine line, but it's not really that light of a touch for a smudgy. Okay, the dragon needs a chance to rest. He needs to dry. I need to stop messing with him, so I'm going to stop messing with him and I'm going to work on the crow for a little while. You'll notice me do this as I'm working on a painting is that I'll focus on one element of the painting and then when it's time to stop and let that dry for a while, I'll move on to another one. So that's a good method if you have to stop messing with something while you want to wait for it to dry, or you could just take a break. It's also okay to just take a break. For adding darkness, I'm just looking at the really easy wins here. Like I know that his feet are going to be a little darker in some places because they're underneath his body, and certain feathers are going to be darker in some places because they're underneath the other feathers. But I also did just go ahead and paint a bunch of shoulder feathers up there darker. And I don't know yet whether there's going to be some light on those. Actually, maybe not, because I don't necessarily see a light source pointing directly at that shoulder. But there's going to be some light bouncing off of his feet eventually because there's a little glowy light bulb down there. So, but for now, I can darken them up a little bit, and that will start to give him some more shape so that I can get my head around where he's supposed to be and what needs to be built up and all of it. One handy thing is that since the crow so far is the same color as the tree, I can just keep using that same paint to build up the tree, make it more opaque anywhere that I feel like I need to. So I'm just going to do that a little bit with the same paint that I'm already using. Also, in case anybody forgot what opaque means, I keep using terms, I'm so sorry, I want to make sure everyone knows what I'm talking about, but opaque means you can't see through it. So the more opaque it is, the less you can see through it. The more you can see through it, the more translucent it is. Opaque, translucent, you got it, you got it. I know I'm not really talking as much in this one, but really we're just building this up. And so it goes. We just keep on building up our paint. Now here I decided that I wanted the blue darker. Before I was doing darker and lighter based on how opaque or translucent things were and letting the white of the paper shine through. But now I just went ahead and added some of that very, very dark purple to the blue to try to make it actually a darker value. Because now I'm trying to pull in even darker values. And I'm putting the darker values in the areas where there would be, I imagine, maybe some shadow. And I guess technically it kind of is a shadow, but shading? Yeah, I guess it's not really shadow so much as it's like shading, but that is kind of like a shadow, but I think of it as something that's a little different. Anyway, the point is I'm adding darker values here where I imagine there would be some shading and shadow. once again, I am not bringing us to any kind of clear stopping point. We're just going to stop the video because it needs to not be a billion years long. But don't worry, there will be another one. And the good news is you can always stop painting when you want to and start again when you want to. So it's all good. Grace and peace, friends. Catch you on the flip side.